Hello, we are here with a virtual lecture for today's class. This will not be your last virtual lecture, but it is your first. And here we're going to continue our discussion of public relations. I'm also going to explain an assignment to you, which I think will be fun. There's going to be a contest aspect to it, and we will have that next Thursday in class, but I'll talk to you more about that at the end of this video. So when we're talking about public relations today is really shaped by a few factors. One is advances in technology. So when we talk about advances in technology, of course, when public relations got its start, just like with advertising, really its only outlet was print media. Today we have radio, we have television, and of course we have the internet and social media, which has really kind of taken over every other medium out there. Advances in technology are great. It gives companies and politicians and organizations numerous ways to reach people. But by that same token, it also gives them a lot more ways to screw something up. And thus the need for public relations is born. Also, because of the advances in technology, instead of just being one-way communication, public relations is now two-way communication. Audiences can receive a message, but audiences can also give feedback. And we really see now that the power that audiences have in what we call cancel culture today. There is a criticism that anytime a celebrity messes up and says something bad on social media or says something offensive, that everyone piles on top of that celebrity and companies are forced to fire people or sever ties with people and effectively get that person canceled. And it does go to show that the power the audience now has when it comes to public relations and public images. And that's my son in the background. I'm sorry, he's stuck here at home with me in quarantine, so you might hear him occasionally. In addition, another factor that shapes public relations is the growth of the middle class. It's not just the wealthy and the poor anymore. America has a huge middle class with tremendous buying power, and they have the ability to purchase goods that they need, and also services that they want. And they also have disposable income to give to charities or donate to campaigns. And every company and organization and politician out there wants a piece of that. And so the growth of the middle class also pushes the need for public relations, because in order to get that cash, these companies and organizations and individuals need to have a positive public image. There's better research tools. That means that organizations can effectively measure what the public response is to a certain campaign or a certain PR stunt or a certain event. The growth of organizations, it used to be if one person was mad about something, they didn't feel like they had any power because it was just one person. But the thing is, you can go on social media these days and find a group for just about anything you can think about there, any cause, any activity. There's groups out there, there's organizations, and those organizations have power. They have the power to make purchasing decisions and also policy decisions. And like I said, with that power the audience has, organizations have similar power. And then, of course, there's been professionalization. Most PR agencies right now are powerhouses. We have a few big global PR firms that we'll talk about a little bit more in this lecture, but they usually are members of societies, and they have a code of ethics and certain standards and criteria they have to meet. All right, so moving on, we're going to talk a little bit about public relations and its audiences. So who is the audience for public relations? Well, the public is the audience, and the public is any group of people with a stake in an organization, issue, or idea. So you have employees. So here at Lincoln University, one of the publics of Lincoln University is us, the employees, the teachers that work here, but also the other staff members, the groundskeepers, the janitors, the people that work in the billing office. We are all part of the public for Lincoln University, and so would the students be. Stockholders. If a company goes public, that means it's traded on the stock exchange, and that means that anyone, if they're willing to pay the price, can own a piece of a company. So for a few $1,000s, you can go and buy one share of Amazon Technically, that makes you a stakeholder with Amazon, and technically, that gives you some influence in what Amazon does. That's kind of an outrageous example because that's such a huge company. The stock price is crazy high. But you can buy stock in any company that's publicly traded, and then you become a stockholder, and that company is beholden to you as a stockholder. Communities are publics. Anytime that anything will affect a community, they have a vested interest in a thing. This is especially true with politicians. Politicians, especially senators and representatives, tend to represent a certain district, and within that district are communities of people who have maybe a common interest in safety, in potholes being repaired on the streets, in how their schools are funded. The media can also be a public, and oftentimes is a public. Whenever you hear about like backlash against a celebrity or someone famous, the media is there telling the story and spreading the message. And also, there's certain people that have to be beholden to the media, like the president. The president has an obligation, like it or not, to talk to the media and answer questions that the media has. Doesn't mean it happens, but that's the way it's supposed to be. And any government official, really. And that's why we go to government now. The government is a public as well. Government has feedback on certain issues. If a company does something that's crazy outrageous, a lot of times the government will intervene. And like these days, even the president threatens to intervene in certain companies. He threatens to ban things like TikTok or Amazon because he has a vendetta with them. And those are kind of extreme examples, but there are times the government will intercede when they view a company as violating the public good in some way. An example of that would be with like tobacco companies. The government intervened and said tobacco companies can no longer put commercials on television. They would intervene and say, you can't have Joe Camel as a mascot anymore because that, targets children. So the government is public too. You have an investment community. These are people that invest money in a company. A lot of times when a company is just getting started, they seek people to invest money in it so that they have startup money. And those investors have a vested interest in that company. So of course, that company or organization is beholden to those investors. And then of course, customers. Any company that's wanting to make a profit is going to want to serve its customers so that its customers continue to buy the product. And customers collectively can have a very powerful impact on a company. So those are the different publics when it comes to public relation audiences. Now, if we talk about the structure of the PR industry, it's a big industry. There's a lot of jobs available. There's over 240,000 PR workers working in 8,000 PR firms across the globe. In 2015, PR companies raked in about $14 billion in revenue. Some of the big ones, I'm sure that some of you have probably even heard of before. In Chicago, you have Edelman. We have Ketchum in New York. We have Ogilvy in New York, Brunswick Group in London. So as you can see, it's not just confined to the United States of America. Other cities and other countries have big PR firms based there as well. Because anytime there's an audience anywhere, you need, PR people to help that audience form an opinion about a company or organization. Okay. So there are several different types of PR firms. The most common type, and like the type that we looked at here in this slide, are full service firms. They're firms that do everything. They can handle a message for any kind of group, and they provide a lot of services as well. However, there's also specialty firms. Specialty firms are more of a niche firm, and they function a couple different ways. A specialty firm can have a select small group of people that it'll work for. Like if you were going to be running for office, you might want a specialty firm that specializes in campaign management. Then there's boutique firms that specialize in, social media or new technology or clothing or fashion or Anything you can think of, there could be a firm for it. And then there's also firms that service a variety of clients but specialize in one thing. Like maybe this firm specializes in video production. Another firm might specialize in social media management. And so there's a few different ways you can go with specialty firms. They can be really narrowed down to what kind of clients they serve, or they can be really narrowed down into what kind of services they provide. Some new things that specialty firms are doing is they'll come up with a video news release now. You guys have all seen, I'm sure, regular press releases that are printed on paper. And something that is new now is actually doing a video news release. And with the video news release, you can actually show things. You can get celebrities to do them. You can get big names to do them. You put them up all over YouTube and all over Facebook. They come up as an ad, and it's a really effective way to get the message out. Many CEOs will have a dedicated media specialist, especially if they're a CEO of a big company or a controversial company. Like, the CEO of a tobacco company is going to need a media specialist because that's a product that gets criticized a lot. There's also a lot of legal things they have to worry about. So CEOs will have media specialists to make sure that they don't mess up, they don't say anything controversial or that will get them in trouble, and that they're also putting a positive public image out there. So a media specialist that specifically works like in the Fortune 500 industry may be part of a specialty firm. And then of course we have web commentary monitoring. I'm sure you guys have all seen things on Facebook where companies post something and then there's 500 messages and you're reading through them, and there's always offensive comments. There's always sexist and racist and homophobic and just really bad comments in there. And there's usually someone whose job it is to monitor the comments and delete anything that violates the policies that company has. So there are people that just monitor the web for comments, and I could not imagine a more soul-crushing job than doing that and like seeing the worst in humanity on display and having to keep up with it, because the comments just keep coming before you can, faster than you can go through them. But there are people that do that. So how do PR companies make money? Well, they bill their clients. Sometimes they bill their clients on an hourly rate, especially if it's going to be a limited partnership. That it's not a full-time, you're my PR firm and you work for me. Then there's also monthly fees. There are some companies that just have a full-time PR firm at their disposal, and they pay a monthly fee for that. There's fixed fee arrangements. We're going to give you X amount of money, and you're going to do X, Y, and Z to get that money. And then there's also collateral materials. If a firm has to create mailing material or create television ads or radio ads, they charge the client for that. It's not something that they cover out of the goodness of their heart. The client has to cover all the material that the PR firm is going to generate on behalf of their client. So you hire a PR firm. What do they do? Well, there's a few different activities they do. One is community relations, and this is where the firm would focus on communities in which the organizations exist. So again, that's going to be big with politicians who are running for office and trying to sway a community. But also most cities of any substantial size have someone who works in PR to an extent to explain decisions or new policies or new taxes that the city is implementing. So if there is a community you need to talk to, there's going to be a community relations activity that's going along with that. Sometimes there's counseling. They give basically advice to an organization's management, telling them, what policies are good or not so good with their publics. They basically tell this person what to do, and they tell the public, this is what we do. So this is the kind of service you would want maybe if you were someone who was who did something that got some negative attention. If you made a negative social media post, or you were you had a bad image that you needed to kind of rehabilitate, you would probably want counseling services from a PR firm. There is development and fundraising aspect to it, especially with campaign season. Both of the candidates now for president are looking for campaign donations, but it's not just at the presidential level. Senators, representatives, governors, anyone running for public office is always looking for campaign donations. Also, there are organizations that rely on development and fundraising. You know, if you think of charities like the United Way and the Red Cross, a lot of times they will start campaigns with the end goal being to raise a certain amount of money. And one of the things those organizations need to do to get you to donate money is to demonstrate the need for contributions. There's a couple ways that this happens. One is corporate social responsibility. That's the integration of business operations and organizational values. Basically, if a company or an organization wants you to give them money, they need to show that they have social responsibility, that they have certain values that they adhere to, and that they work to meet those values, that they are, ethically upstanding. Cause marketing is work in support of social issues and causes. So there may be one particular social issue or cause that gets a lot of attention, and so their organizations are demonstrating a need to fund that. For example, with all the issues we've had with police brutality in the last few months, Black Lives Matter is one group that's getting a lot of support. And one of the ways that is translating to fundraising is that people are donating money to Black Lives Matter, and some of that money was being used to bail out people who were arrested during protests. And then, of course, you have, the need to be socially responsible as an organization. It's not something that people always thought about, but today, 88% of consumers want to hear about a business's social responsibility. They want to support businesses that align with their ethical standards and reflect the values that they hold. So you got to have a good image these days in order to be successful. There's also employee or member relations. Again, remember we said employees are one of those public audiences. So if you're in an organization and you have employees, those employees need to have a certain amount of morale and a certain amount of motivation to work for you and help you, make whatever widget it is you make and produce whatever it is you produce. And if those employees are disgruntled enough, they're either not going to be motivated to work, and they might be not motivated to work to such an extent that they quit. So, we always hear jobs that are horrible and nightmarish, but a good company is going to need to maintain a certain level of employee morale. And there are PR firms that specialize in that. Financial relations. These are practiced primarily by corporate organizations because corporate organizations are the ones that tend to be concerned with money. They focus on the enhancement of communication between investor-owned companies and their shareholders. So remember, I told you, stockholders and shareholders are one of the publics for public relations. They have a vested interest in a company because they own part of the company when they bought stock in that company, and the company has an obligation to communicate with them and let them know what they are doing. There's also a financial community that you have to think of: banks, annuity groups, investment firms, and the public. If you have a mortgage or a car payment that you make to a financial group like a bank, you have a relationship with that bank, and that bank that is obligated to communicate with you in a certain manner, especially if they're going to change rates or change policies or change ownership. I'm sure some of you have had loans that were with one company and they sold that loan to another company. They have to communicate that with you. And then credit unions are membership driven. So a lot of times credit unions have an audience they need to communicate with, which is their members, and they need to recruit more members. Strategy. So how are we going to expand into new markets? How are we going to acquire more property? If a company is looking to expand into a new market like China, they might hire a PR firm to look at the kind of issues they're going to face in expanding to that new market. Is there a viable market there? Will we be welcome in China? If a company is going to buy another company, they might hire a firm to research that and determine whether that's a good decision, whether there'd be any negative feedback from doing that. Government affairs. We talked a little bit about this on Class Tuesday. Lobbying. So lobbyists are directly interacting to influence elected officials or government regulators and agents. So lobbyists literally go to the office of a senator or a representative, any elected official really, and tell them, we don't think you should vote for this bill, and this is why. And usually it has something to do with that bill will impact their ability to make money or further an agenda. Sometimes if a company's wanting to expand or acquire another company, they might be in danger of violating monopoly laws. And so they want to really kind of lobby government officials to, be maybe a little lax on certain laws. And sometimes they are looking for funding. And there are people that are government relations professionals, because if you're going to work in that realm, you really need to know your stuff, and you really need to know the laws that apply to lobbying, because there are things lobbyists can do, and then there's things that lobbyists certainly cannot do. For example, they can't give money to a candidate, and they can't give gifts to a candidate. And a lot of times there's restrictions even on whether or not they can take them out to dinner and stuff, because all that could be seen as unfairly influencing a candidate. Industry relations. So this would be if a company was interacting with other companies in the same line of business. An industry is a group of companies that all do the same thing. So like the car industry, specifically the domestic car industry, consists of Ford, Chrysler, and Chevy. And a lot of times companies need to monitor what other companies in their same line of business are doing. What are their strategies? What is the image that they're trying to portray out there? And is there any weakness in there that we can attack? They want to know about their competitors and their suppliers, if possible, and also state and federal regulators. So what are the rules that the companies that are in that business have to abide by? Another PR activity is issues management. This would be shaping an opinion on a specific issue. This happens a lot with, again, government or social justice type things. Obviously, people who are running for office want to shape the public's opinion on an issue like healthcare or immigration, and get people to have an opinion that favors their political party. Media relations. This helps clients really understand the media and prepare materials for the media and build good relationships with the media. So that might be a PR firm might prepare press releases and teach organizations and companies how the media works and how to develop a good relationship with them, how to talk to them, how to get favorable coverage, not in a way that where you're bribing them and making them unbiased, but be responsive to their phone calls. And then also there's marketing communications. Marketing is a little bit different from pure public relations. So public relations is all about a company's image, but when you talk about marketing, that gets into selling a product. So marketing is kind of like the marriage of advertising and public relations. So if you have a marketing communication specialist, that could include some advertising work. However, the advertising is very tightly controlled so that it reflects well on the company. And the advertising does not set policy, but it does implement it. Which means a company might have a policy about not giving money to a certain political group. Okay? The advertising doesn't make that policy. That policy already exists. What the advertising does is let everyone know about it. So, for example, if Apple was going to say, we are no longer donating money to the Republican Party, that would be a policy that Apple has. And the advertising doesn't make that policy. That's something that they already do. But their advertising campaign is going to be to let people know about that policy. Minority relations and multicultural affairs. These are activities directed towards specific racial and ethnic minorities, and that can also involve messages to employees, especially if those employees are a member of an ethnic minority. This is becoming more important than ever. We're having kind of a big revolution right now in race relations in this country and making sure that minorities are represented. Even the Oscars now has requirements in there to be considered for Best Picture. Films have to reflect certain minority populations and also employ crew members that are representative of certain minority populations. There's also been a big backlash against what we call whitewashing, which is when you cast white people to portray ethnic roles. For example, back when, what's his name? Ben Kingsley. Ben Kingsley played Gandhi, then won like an Oscar to do it. There wasn't a big backlash against it at the time, but right now, if you tried to have a white actor portray an Indian leader who's like, infamous, there would be a lot of backlash against that, because it's like an effort should go into casting people who are actually, racially representative of the person that they're supposed to be portraying, especially when there's not a lot of opportunities out there for, say, Indian actors or actors of color. Another PR activity is public affairs. This is interacting with officials and leaders of the various power centers with whom a client must deal. So a lot of times that includes community and government officials. When you talk about public affairs, that's an aspect of reporting that focuses on politics, government. So if you have someone that specializes in public affairs, they're going to be needed if you have anything to do with a community and its government officials. May include leaders of pressure groups. There are groups that are out there to just put pressure on politicians and government officials to vote certain ways and to enact certain policies. And they will also emphasize social responsibility and building goodwill. So again, portraying that positive image out there. Also, we have special events and public participation. This is when a company wants to stimulate interest in them. They want to stimulate interest in an organization or a person or a product through a happening. So this is basically when you stage an event. A few years ago, flash mobs were the big thing. If you wanted to bring attention to an organization or a cause or a new product, you would have a flash mob seamlessly, spontaneously break out in a surprise. Happenings can be small, like flash mobs, or they can be large. It could be a concert. It could be, like when Apple releases a new product, they have like the whole company and all the shareholders come together in a big auditorium, and they have, used to be Steve Jobs. It's obviously not Steve Jobs anymore, up on stage, basically acting like a rock star, announcing and unveiling new products. And then, of course, you have research. So if you're going to have all this money that you spend on public relations, you want to make sure you're getting bang for your buck. So you're determining the attitudes and behaviors of various publics. You want to see if they're responding to your campaigns. And also, like, what do people are concerned about right now? Because sometimes a company will adopt a policy or a cause based on what the public opinion is. Like, oh, okay, so right now public opinion is really like against police brutality. So we're going to make sure that we donate 10% of all our proceeds to Black Lives Matter. And you want to make sure that that's going to be a good investment, so you research it before you actually do that. So if you are a member of PR, what is your function? Your function is to anticipate, analyze, and interpret public opinions and issues. You also need to counsel an organization's management. Tell them what they need to do. Tell them what the public's thoughts are on a certain topic. You need to research and conduct public relations efforts and evaluate them. So not only do you need to figure out what your strategy is going to be, but after you implement a public relations campaign, was it successful or not? Did it have the desired outcome? You need to plan and implement efforts to influence or change public policy. So change is one of the hardest things for any organization or company to do. And if a company does need to implement a new policy or change a policy because of the public response to said policy, that might need something that a PR person would come in to help you out with. And also they have to manage resources. What resources do you have at your disposal? What kind of money are you making? What other resources do you have? So, a basic PR organization, of course, every company is different, but this is kind of, broad strokes. the type of jobs that are available at a PR organization. So you have the executive branch. An executive branch mainly consists of the chief executive officer. That's the person who sets policy and serves as the spokesperson of the operation. That's the boss. So the executive is the guy that's in charge. He's the CEO, chief executive officer. Below the executive, you have account executives. So each account has its own executive who works directly with the client. So let's say you work at a big, giant PR company and Ford is one of your clients. Ford is going to have a dedicated account executive, probably more than one, that just works for them, that just handles Ford. If you have smaller companies, you may have an account executive who covers a certain branch. Like this account executive handles all alcohol. This account executive handles all of our fashion brands. But each account executive has its own each account has its own executive who works directly with the client. So they're kind of the face when it comes to the client. They interact with the client, determine what the client wants, and tell the client what they need. They provide advice, they define problems and situations, and they assess what the public wants. Once they've assessed what the public wants, they can recommend a communication plan or a campaign. And then they're going to also get the resources necessary for that campaign. Then you have the creatives, the creative specialists. Creative specialists are your artists. They're the writers, people who come up with material, graphic designers, video and audio producers, web designers, photographers, anyone who has to create something that's going to be viewed by the public or by a client is going to be a creative specialist. And they're really kind of like the unsung, unseen heroes. They're the ones that are like actually producing stuff. And a lot of times don't get a lot of credit for it. I'm a creative myself, so I feel their pain. Media specialists. So you have to have someone who's aware of the requirements, preferences, limitations, and strengths of various media uses to serve the client. So a media specialist will be able to tell you, this is what your message should be, and this is the best way to get it out there. This is the best platform for you to use. And they're going to say this would not be a good use of, your material and your time. You also have people who are just researchers. They do polling. This is especially true with people that are running for office. Obviously, politicians need to know how they're doing in the polls. So within a person's campaign, they will have people that just focus on polling. Interviews. They also conduct focus groups where they get a group of people together and show them a new movie or show them a new product and get their feedback on what they think about it. You often have a government relations department of a PR operation. They know about lobbying and direct communication with politicians. And again, there's a lot to know there. There's a lot of legal things to consider and ethical violations that could be made. So a lot of times a PR company will have a special government relations department. And then also you have financial services. So these are individuals with a very specific and sophisticated knowledge of economics. That's not going to be me, but it's very important. You need to know, how the economy works and how a client's financial situation allows them to do certain things and not do certain things. They also are very versed in business and corporate law. Sometimes actually they'll have lawyers on staff that can help answer legal questions. So, trends and convergence in PR today. Of course, convergence is everywhere. Every media that we talk about, we're going to talk about convergence with it. It's going to be present in advertising, public relations, radio, television, the internet. It's all over. And so one big trend that's a trend in many industries is globalization. Companies aren't just American anymore or just aren't in one country anymore. There's a foreign ownership of a lot of the big PR firms out there. Remember, we talked about some of those big PR firms, and some of them are based in London, and some of them are based in Beijing, Sydney, Paris. You're going to find public relations firms with offices all over the globe, and sometimes they're actually foreign owned. PR firms, almost every giant PR firm is going to have an operation abroad. They may be based in America, may be an American company, but they're going to have offices in Europe, in Africa, and Asia, and South America, wherever their audiences are. 6 of the world's 10 largest marketing organizations do have ownership outside the United States, so that's a majority. Also, in addition to globalization, public relations has become very concentrated. So what is happening is that PR firms are growing. PR firms are becoming bigger, and they're swallowing up these little individual firms. And so you have these big corporations that have all these different tentacles, and a lot of the smaller firms can't compete with these giant PR firms anymore. For example, Omnicom. Omnicom's a corporation that operates in 100 countries. They have over 100,000 employees, and they serve over 5,000 clients. So if you're thinking of starting a PR firm, you might be asked, well, look at all this stuff that Omnicom can do for me, because they have so many people and they have so much money. What can a small specialty firm offer? But despite that, there is kind of a focus on specialization. There might be, like I said, again, boutique firms that focus on one issue, and they know that issue inside and out, and so that's what they can provide. They can't provide the resources and the manpower that these larger firms can, but they know the issue backwards and forwards, and maybe you don't need a giant corporation and pay giant corporation prices for what you need. And they're often the fields that are in need of public relations professionals are the environment. Of course, climate change is always a hot topic right now. Healthcare. Again, healthcare is something that everyone cares about because people get sick, and also it's complicated. The billing system is hard to understand. Your rights as a patient are hard to understand. If you're working with insurance companies, that's a maze. So healthcare, and then pharmaceuticals. That's of course a huge industry right now, is drugs. And we've all heard horror stories about certain pharmaceutical companies that jack up the rates of a certain drug, and sometimes there's a lot of pushback on that. And of course, one of the things that we have to talk about when we talk about convergence is the internet and social media. That is how the majority of companies and organizations communicate these days, because that's where your audience is. Yes, television is still out there, and there's still ads that play even on streaming services. And yes, people still do listen to the radio, but internet and social media, that's where your audience is. That's where everyone's looking. So companies have to be well-versed in how to use the internet and social media to their advantage. And we talked about that a little bit earlier with VNRs, those video news releases. Everyone has a video these days. And again, they're short, snappy videos, hopefully with catchy slogan. And a lot of times they're not, even 30 seconds or 60 seconds might be too long for someone to pay attention to something. So a lot of times you have these little 10-second mini videos that's just meant to whet the audience's appetite and lead them to look for more information on a topic. And of course, web publishing, publishing isn't just about books and magazines anymore. Anyone can publish anything on the web. So an integrated marketing communication is when you combine public relations, marketing, advertising, and promotion functions into a seamless communication campaign that is home on the web, the TV, and magazines. So the idea is you're going to put all your advertising and public relations money into one group that does it all for you. They take care of your public relations image, they take care of advertising for you, and they do it all. They make sure that your web presence is strong. They can create ads for TVs, they can create ads for magazines, and it's basically a full service type of plan. And what they're trying to do is provide the client and agency greater control over communication in an increasingly fragmented but synergized media environment. So yes, there's more outlets for you, but even though there's more outlets, you might not need all those outlets to work for you. And then there's viral marketing, and this is when you rely on targeting specific internet users with a given communication and relying on them to spread the word. So I'm sure you guys have all heard of influencers, people on social media that have large followings. Sometimes companies will have influencers who promote a specific thing. A few years ago, there was something called the Fire Festival. It was going to be this big, huge concert with all these acts that was going to be held in the Caribbean, and the organizers of that event hired people that were popular on social media, like Kylie Jenner, to promote this event and talk about the Fire Festival. And like they would generate, thousands of dollars and thousands of customers wanting to be a part of that. So viral marketing is a very real thing. And it's not just like getting social media influencers to post for you, but it could just be like having some kind of stunt that is going to go viral, creating a video or having an event that someone happens to videotape that goes viral and everyone starts talking about it on the internet. The internet, so it provides various publics with a new powerful way to counter even the best PR efforts. So a company can say anything it wants to say, but if it's lying, the public's going to find out about it and they're going to use the internet to blast back on them. There's a couple of ways the internet can help but also hurt. And then also when you're dealing with the internet, you have to worry about certain things like web monitors. Because again, I said, most companies have someone who's just dedicated to monitoring web activity and social media comments about them. And also you will have these specialty firms and they are there just to alert clients to negative references on the web and suggest effective countermeasures. So they're called eWatch. So like if you work with eWatch, they'll monitor the web, and anytime someone says like in a chat room something negative about your company, you get an alert. And if you get enough negative comments, they're going to say, okay, this is the campaign you need to do to reverse this public image you have. Smartphones, tablets, and social networking sites. So everyone that has a smartphone or a tablet or anything that can access the internet has the ability now to have what we call a free megaphone. They have a way to talk to a tremendous audience. If you tweet something, the whole world could potentially see it, and that gives people a tremendous amount of power. If you're on there complaining about Spirit Airlines, and enough people see it and enough people start talking about it, Spirit Airlines is going to have to respond to that. And it gives millennials a greater sense of involvement with a company or an organization, which can be both good and bad. It can be good if millennials feel invested in a company, they might support it financially or also in their online presence and give them a good image. But if you piss off millennials, be prepared for the backlash. Again, we live in cancel culture and people aren't putting up with BS anymore. If you make them mad, they're going to let you know about it. So, trust in public relations. That's a tricky one. 69% of people say they don't trust public relations. Only 12% of people trust public relations. So, we've had bad politicians who've had higher approval ratings than 12%. 12% is a dismal approval rating. And they just don't buy it. And so what are they doing? They're trying to fight back. They're trying to do more with public relations. For every journalist out there, there are 4 PR professionals. So there would be 4 people trying to convince one journalist of something. Something that has popped up is something called flogs. This is fake blogs. Sometimes a company will pretend they're not a company, they pretend they're an individual, and they start blogging about this one company. There was an example of there was these people that claimed that they were driving across country in an RV and they were always blogging about Walmart because they would always stop at Walmart. Well, it was actually Walmart doing it. It was someone that worked for a PR firm for Walmart making this fake blog. And when people found out about it, of course, they were furious about it. So you got to watch out for fake blogs. There's a growing movement of the transparentists. Transparentists are people that demand that the industry adopt a position in full and total disclosure, driven by the innate openness and accessibility to information available on the internet. So transparentists say every company needs to tell us everything. They need to let us look at everything. And the reason you need to do that is because it's possible now. You can put your whole portfolio on the internet and we can find out anything about you that we want to find out. So you might as well make it easy for us. And then this is where your assignment comes in. So fake online reviews. If you have ever bought anything off Amazon, and I know I did this, when I buy something off Amazon and I'm not sure about it, I look at the reviews. And you can almost always spot 1 or 2 fake reviews. They're just too good. And sometimes companies will pay people to write positive reviews for them, or they'll send someone a free product if they'll write a positive review about them. And then there's just online reviews that are like written by bots and not even, not even a real person. So how do you spot a fake online review? Well, first of all, you need to find more than one source. So if you're looking at a product that you want to buy on Amazon, yeah, you can read the reviews that are there on the Amazon website, but then you need to go to another website, like maybe Consumer Reports, and type in the product and see what they say about the product. So you want to go to more than one source. You should also look for copycat reviews. Sometimes you'll see almost the same review, nearly word for word, but written by two different people. So you want to keep an eye out for that. Anything that's written in all caps or has just really terrible grammar and spelling errors, that's usually a pretty good sign that that's written by someone that's not a real customer. Look for links. People should not be putting links in their reviews. If they're putting links in their reviews, that means they want you to go somewhere and look at something. And if they're doing that, there's obviously a hidden motivation. They're not just trying to give you an honest review. Look for balanced comments. If all reviews are good or all reviews are bad, usually that's actually a red flag, because you can't please everyone all the time. And so you want to find, a product that has a balance of, here's some of the good, but here's some of the bad. Here's some of the pros, but here's some of the cons. You should look for experts. There are literally expert organizations that you can look up on the web and get their opinions on a product. There's a growing trend today in not believing experts and not believing scientists, and not wanting to trust anyone and thinking that you can do all your own research on your own on Facebook and believing anything you see on Facebook as long as it fits your preconceived notions. But there are experts out there, and it's usually beneficial to listen to them. Look for information that can be verified. Look for something that can back it up. You want to be able to, prove what you found. Looking in more than one space helps do that. Read professional reviews. Go to a professional organization that is just in charge of reviewing products, like Consumer Reports. Consumer Reports is a professional organization that gives professional reviews. Ask questions. If someone's posting a comment about something, sometimes you can actually post a question on that message board and ask them certain things. And then seek consensus. Again, if a number of reviews are positive or if a number of reviews are negative, you can kind of get which way the wind's blowing on that. That's why a lot of times when I look at products, I'm like, only show me things that have 4 stars or more. So seeking consensus. So that brings you to your assignment. So what are we going to do for our assignment? So this is kind of fun. You are going to find a fake review. So pick a product, a service, or a place that you don't have, that you haven't visited and that you don't know anything about. So it could be a product like Louis Vuitton shoes, if you don't have Louis Vuitton shoes. It can be a service, maybe you've never used Uber Eats, or it can be a place that you've never visited, like a tropical vacation package that you want to look at. But it's got to be something that you're not familiar with. Find as many online reviews as you can. So, if you're going to do a review or try to find a fake review of, say, a Chanel purse, you'd want to go to the Chanel website, but also look at other companies that sell Chanel, like Amazon. You can go on Yelp, you can go on Facebook. CNET is a good group for consumer electronics. Again, Consumer Reports. So find as many online reviews as you can. So there's going to be 2 aspects to this. There's going to be the written part of the assignment and then the contest part of the assignment. So first, write a list of all the places you visited for reviews. So you need to go to a minimum of 3 places for reviews. So it can be the company's website, say Amazon and Yelp, or it can be Facebook, Amazon, and Consumer Reports. Just write at least 3 places you visited. If you want to visit more places and you want to list those, feel free. Find at least one potentially fake review. Explain in 2 to 3 sentences what gives it away. So you've got to go back and think of the hints that I gave you. Which of the hints on that last slide that we looked at does it look like makes that a fake review? Okay, so explain that in 2 or 3 sentences. Oh, sorry, I'm using my daughter's computer and it's crazy. Okay. Hold on just a second. There we go. Okay. So based on your assessment of the reviews, what is your overall impression of the product, service, or place? Would you buy it? Would you use that service? Or would you visit that location? Tell me why or why not, 2 to 3 sentences. So the written part's like basically 6 sentences. It's not that hard. What we're gonna do is Thursday, when we finally meet back in class, we're gonna share your findings in class. And prizes will be given in the following categories. The student who had the greatest number and variety of review sites listed in the written part of their assignment. So again, minimum's 3, but if you go with 10, then you get a prize, you know, because if 10's the most. If you find more than 1 fake review, then you could win a prize. If you find the most fake reviews, you must provide some documentation though, whether it's printing off the page or doing a screenshot or taking a picture. But if you can find more than 1 fake review, good for you. There's a prize for that if you find the most. If you find a crazy, egregious example of deception, again, you got to provide documentation. You got to take a picture of the remarks or something. But if you find something that's just blatantly fake, bring it in. And like by blatantly fake, I mean maybe full of grammatical errors. It's Nigerian prince promising money if you buy this product, some type of thing that's just obviously screams fake. And then the student who finds the best product, service, or place. So after we hear from everyone, we're going to vote on who did the best job of finding a fake review. And then we're going to vote. The only rule is you can't vote for yourself, because if you could vote for yourself, we might have a 10-way tie. So we got to vote for the person who found the best product, service, or place review. And then prizes will be given in each of those categories. So there'll be 4 prizes to give out. And I'm not going to tell you what the prizes are. You'll find out the day of the contest, which again will be next Thursday. So I'm going to post this assignment in Canvas. It's going to be due Thursday, September 24th, and it'll be due at the beginning of class because, obviously we're going to present this in class. So that's it for our unit on public relations. When we next meet Thursday, we'll go over the contest. And then on Tuesday of next week, we're going to start our work on radio because it's getting kind of close to midterm and we need to tackle radio before we get to midterm. And so we will have a video lecture based on radio. The radio video lecture will probably be on the longer side, so I might break it into 2 parts.